Your heart's racing, your chest feels tight or heavy. You tell yourself to calm down, but it tends to get worse, right? Like, here's why. Your body doesn't listen to thoughts or words, it listens to the signals that it's receiving. My name's Campbell. I'm a physiotherapist turned breathwork educator, and I've spent years working in hospitals and clinics, watching people live in survival mode, right? In this constant state of fight, flight, and seeing the impact it has on their body. Most people think stress is mental, but when we start to look at it through this more physiological lens, it changes our approach. Right? So, in the next 7 minutes, I want to show you exactly what's keeping your body in this kind of sympathetic fight flight state. And one quick thing you can do to start to turn that off, right? Now, to get there, we first need to kind of know what the fight flight response is, right? How it happens in the body and why it's being continually activated, right? Fight or flight, is just one part of this nervous system, right? The nervous system, particularly the autonomic nervous system, is kind of the interface between out there and in here, right? Something scary happening, right? Well, my body needs to kind of shift gears. Hey, increase heart rate, send blood flow out to the muscles, get ready to run away because something in the environment triggered this response. One of the biggest inputs, right, to determine whether the body is going to trigger this response is the way that we're breathing. Think about it, right? What happens when you get a fright? What happens when you're bracing for impact? What happens when you're trying not to cry? All these things are happening at the level of the breath. And so my nervous system is kind of like listening to the breath to determine how it should be responding. And so why are so many people kind of stuck in this fight flight response is because they're breathing in a way that's telling their nervous system that's the appropriate state to be in. When you breathe up into the chest, when you use the mouth, when you use the muscles of the neck, when you breathe fast or you breathe shallow, my nervous system receives these things and says something in the environment must be scary. We should increase heart rate, accelerate brain waves, divert blood flow away from the gut out to the muscles, secrete some cortisol, right? Like, get ready to deal with whatever it is that caused us to breathe like this. But what's causing us to breathe like this is the modern world, the 21st century, the 5 hours a day we spend on our phone or our laptop, the sitting in a chair, the chronic stress, right? All these things are shaping our breath, and our breath is what is telling our nervous system what state we should be in. And for a lot of people, it's literally just telling nervous system, hey, run that fight or flight, man. Like, something is about to happen. We need to be ready. And so people are living in this constant kind of defensive, protective, right? Like vigilant state because the nervous system is predicting something threatening could be happening. So when we kind of understand these kind of like almost false alarm that is ringing, because there isn't a tiger chasing us, right? We don't need to mobilize our resources to get ready to run away from the threat, because the threat is my social media notifications. The threat is the email from my boss. The threat is my finances, right? Like, these things are not acute, direct, threatening things, right? It's very different in the 21st century. So telling ourselves, oh, it's just an email from my boss, right, is not working with the physiology of stress, right? Stress is something I talk about often in my weekly newsletter. Like, you can join, there's a link below this. If you want more of these like practical insights as to how we can actually work with things like stress in the nervous system, that's where I share a lot more information. But let's get back to, right? So my breath is kind of being shaped by the stresses in my environment, telling my nervous system, hey, run that fight flight program. We can tell ourselves intellectually, oh, it's nothing, it's different form of stress, but that is not changing our physiology. So what we need to do is we need to approach this from the lens of physiology, a bottom up tool of regulation, right? How can we change the channel on the nervous system, not by mindset, right, but by changing the breath and the body? And so what we want to kind of do here, the kind of common misconception is like, let's jump straight into breathing really calm, right? Your nervous system does not jump from stress, fight or flight to like, oh, we must be super calm, right? We want to kind of think of it a little bit more like a staircase. Sometimes we need to meet the nervous system where it's at and then begin to bring it down. So as a little reset to begin to shift out of this fight or flight, we're going to use intentional kind of breath hold and tension, followed by these long exhales and relaxation. Right? we're going to lengthen each exhale as if we're walking down a set of stairs. Right? What we're doing here, instead of trying to go from fight, flight to relaxed, right? We're going like a little bit more chill, a little bit more chill, a little bit more chill. Right? The nervous system needs that kind of progressive stepping down rather than trying to jump to the bottom step, right? So what we do is we're going to exhale first. We're going to take a slow but full inhale through the nose. Trying to breathe low in the body, not up here. We're going to pause and we're actually going to create a little bit of tension, right? I'm going to clench the fists. I'm going to squeeze the arms, the chest, right? Kind of creating this little crescendo. And then as I exhale, I'm going to release that tension, just let the air kind of fall out. Right? Slow inhale through the nose. Create some tension. We're going to hang out here, squeezing a little bit, right? And now we're going to make the exhale a little bit slower. You can make noise, you don't have to. It can be nose, it can be mouth. We're just looking for this kind of falling, lengthening exhale. One more time, inhale. Create the tension, right? So we can squeeze the thighs, the bottom, the belly, the chest, the arms, right? Create this tension so that as we let go of the breath, we can start to kind of like unwind some of that tension, right? It is much easier to relax a fist that has been tense, right? We can unclench it. And so we're doing this, creating tension so that we can let it kind of unravel. And each breath becomes a little bit longer, right? Until ideally, let's say that inhale is taking you about 4 seconds. That long exhale is maybe going to be 8 or 10 seconds. Now, everyone is different, right? So we can't tell you this is the exact rate to do it, but trying to have this little bit of a self-awareness of like, okay, here are the steps for me and practicing this. If you do this consistently, you start to send the signal where your nervous system can begin to shift out of that fight flight and into this mode of recovery. And when you do that, everything about your resources begins to change, right? This is a kind of one of these really strong concepts of this interaction between breathing and the nervous system, right? This is really the basis of the program that we run called Functional and Therapeutic Breathwork. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, just check out the video below, right? But if you are living in this chronic state of sympathetic kind of fight, flight action, shifting, right, your nervous system is one of the most important things you can do for your long-term health and well-being.